Hello. My screen is very flickery. Let me see if I can fix that. Voila. How is it going today, friends? We are jumping into another live stream about testing. Where we left off last time was we had created some tests for all of these modules that we have in our built-ins folder. And then we started creating tests for our actual source code. So we started with this create API file, and we wanted to write a test for it. So let's see if we can bump that text up one more time. Is that not too big? I think that looks all right. Cool. So in our test, what we did was we have a file. Actually, I'm going to bump that down. That's good enough. So we have a file where we import some of the dependencies. We import the file that we want to test. We import another global, which I'm going to import there, move that up. Not global, but a node module. And then we import the file that we're going to test. And at the top of our file, we create a mock for node fetch because we don't want to send HTTP requests over this network while our tests are running. So we mock the module, which returns a default property, which is a mocked function that returns a promise that resolves to an object, and that object contains a property called JSON, which itself is a mocked function, which also returns a promise that resolves to an object, and that object is going to just return a property called random dog. Random dog is randomly generated by the Faker API. We also generate a couple fake API keys, which we use to pass into our create API method. Those are required properties, so we just assume that it's always going to be the case. I'm not going to write tests in case those don't exist. This is throwing an error because it thinks that it's actually working with fetch. But because this is a mocked version of fetch, because we are mocking it, TypeScript doesn't know that that's actually what's going on. So we can ignore that. Here, this is expecting an argument, but got none. So we're just going to quickly ignore that as well, because we actually want to test what happens if we call this function without any parameters. And in fact, that is probably a bug that we have in our type definition, because that is a type definition bug, because this is actually an optional value. So I think I can probably give that an empty object to begin with, and we'll just mark that as being optional. That saves us some potential type issues, because if this was undefined, I think that would throw an error. Let's validate our assertions and say ... undefined. Or I guess I could do ... undefined. No, I guess that works fine. Okay. So that actually does not need to be set. We'll leave that. And then this is complaining Because why? Argument of type app ID string does not exist in type URL search params. Open weather API key is a string. App ID should be a string. It's complaining. Why is it complaining about that? Argument of type app ID string lat long unit language is not assignable to parameter of type string or URL search params. That is very strange. What if this was something else? I don't know why that's complaining. And once again, over here, does not exist in type URL search params. I may have a incorrect understanding of what URL search params allows for. Oh, I think I have that right. Yeah. Okay, I think the problem that we're seeing here is that this type definition may be coming from it may be misunderstanding what's going on. So this should be fine. If I ignore that and paste it there, I think that is going to work fine for my needs. I guess I need to paste it there. Interesting issue that we're dealing with, but this should be valid. Onward. What we were doing currently was writing a test for this one call method. So I want to assert that it passes default parameters to Open Weather API, which means if I call it with no argument at all, I expect that it calls, makes a fetch request to this API endpoint, which is what we will see. We actually don't need to start that dev environment. I want to run npm run test. And what test will do is run Vitest. What Vitest does is it watches for changes in my test files and then reruns anytime I make a change. So now you're complaining. You're complaining because this is a string and not one of imperial, metric, or standard. Imperial, metric, standard. So Faker library may need some help with that. That's kind of annoying. I'm going to ignore that for now. And then we have an error here saying app ID string. It's not assignable to type string. Well, lots of false positives on these JavaScript or TypeScript type checks because this is actually written correctly and should work just fine. So let's move on to what is the test that I want to write next. It passes custom parameters to Open Weather API. Let's see that. So currently we're testing the request up until this point. We have tested that we're getting default parameters. We have tested that we're getting custom parameters and that those are being passed to fetch via HTTP request. Now, the last thing I really want to test is I don't really care that it calls response.json. I just care that whatever comes back from the HTTP request is returned from this function. So let's make our new test down here. Test.concurrent. It returned. Look at that. It's almost as if it could hear what I was saying. And we will close that test off. And this is more or less exactly what I need this function to do. That's amazing. Response.favorite animal. It does not exist on type open weather one call. Right, because that has a type associated with it. Which is this. This is what it's going to look like. That should be fine. We can really quickly just do a quick fix on that and ignore that as well. Great. Lots of ignoring TypeScript. That's always fun. So with that, we should have gotten our test passing, but it looks like we're getting undefined in the response. So what's the problem? I am expecting that. I'm getting undefined. My method here. So let me do console log response and then console log the JSON. And let's see what happens now. When we rerun this, okay, so we see undefined, and I know what's going on here. What's going on here is that when our mock gets created, oh geez, when our mock gets created, it's using random dog, but it's hoisting random dog up. So it's instantiating random dog, but it is not assigning it by the time that this mock gets created. So this format is actually not going to work. Okay. New strategy. Every time we call this method, it's going to randomly generate a dog, which is fine for every other test except for this last one. Because now, in order for us to figure out what this random dog is, we need to say const fetch calls equals fetch.mock.calls. And then we have to access those calls. Const this is interesting what it's asking me to do. I don't think that's what I want. I want the, what do I want? I'm just going to log that. That's an object. Fetch calls, please. So let's see where that puts us. rerunning tests. Okay, here are my fetch calls. I feel like well, first I feel like those should be resetting. Those should be clearing, so I should not have more than one, but instead I'm getting 3 because I have 1, 2, 3 times that I call this. Why is this not clearing things out for me? One, two, three. All right, let's go to the Vitest docs and see what we've got. We want mock clear. Clears all information about every call after calling it. Spy.mock.calls spy.mock.returns will return empty arrays. So you need to clean up spies between different assertions. Okay, what about before each? Or callback to call before each of the tests in the current context runs. If the function returns a promise, it will await it. Okay, so why is it not clearing this out? All right, so if I call it immediately before, it does clear it out. And if I don't call it immediately before, oh, is it because I'm running my test concurrently? Perhaps. Perhaps that is the issue. That is kind of annoying. Well, let's clear that out and let's get rid of that. And in fact, that is not working as it's supposed to work. Unfortunately. So now, one of the problems is if I call this function essentially twice, or if I only call it once, and I make this assertion twice, really the second time I shouldn't expect to pass. But it does, because a previous test has passed it. Okay. That's annoying, and I'm not sure how to fix that. I move this down here, and this runs again. Should have 2 failing tests. Oh, I don't. What is going on there? What is going on here? All right, let's see. Am I going to get my second? Okay, so now I'm getting my second failing error. This is annoying. This is quite annoying. Before each is not working. Perhaps after each will be more promising. Let's try that. So now I may actually have it correct. Let's see here. So things are failing that should be failing. I'm not going to call this mock clear. That's the first time it's called. I expect it to be called with that, and then we clear the mock. And then we don't clear the mock. Normally, what percent of the time will I be writing tests versus making the application? It depends on how good you are at writing tests, how good you are at writing apps, and how simple or complex the code is that you're writing. So I'm going to get this going so it's just fixed and we can kind of keep it working. So before I run any of these, because this is not working as intended, I'm going to cut that out, get rid of this after each, which is not working like it's supposed to be, unfortunately. And then I'm going to make my API call, do my X assertion, and at the end, I'm just going to. Oh, shoot. I think it might be because I was at the root of the project. Okay, hold on. Let me try this one more time. Let's try this. Before each, let's put that inside of my describe block. And then hopefully that will run before each of these tests. And maybe it will run before all of these as well. But yeah, it could be 50-50. I think I spend probably more time. Well, I don't know. It kind of depends on your approach. There's different strategies for writing tests. Some people like to do what's called test-driven development, which means before they do any logical application code writing, they'll start writing their tests and design the sort of logical flow of the test and the assertions before they write their code. So they'll start with the first assertion, and then it obviously won't work because the code is not yet written. Then they'll write the code to make the assertion run, function correctly. Then they'll move on to the next assertion. So if you're trying to add numbers, for example, you say, well, what happens if you don't provide the two parameters that are necessary, and you kind of write your code to account for that. And then you say, well, what happens if you provide a string, and then maybe you account your code to handle when a string is provided. Yeah, I don't know. I think the trick is to just write tests until you feel comfortable that changes to your code are not going to break as long as the tests are passing. So now I need to figure out why this isn't working. And maybe this is my last try if I put this and clear the mocks before each inside of each describe block, if that's the secret sauce. And it looks like that's not the case because I'm still getting three. The fetch is saying that it's been run 3 times despite me only calling it once here. So let's try this. If I clear the mock first and rerun it, now I actually do get just the one time that it was called and the one value that it received. So, yep, there it is. That's correct. That's what I expect. Okay, let's fix these tests then. I do expect this last test to fail because I have just an empty string there. I need to take this and basically paste it at the top of each one of these because there's a bug in the system. I can get rid of this. So this is one of those things where I'm using a library that is in beta, and that's probably an issue on their end. Nonetheless, this should all work except for the last test. And it looks like when we rerun, it looks like everything was working. I have 2 broken tests. So that's interesting. Let's go to the one that was working before. Here, API 1 call. Second test is failing, which is interesting because I expect all of these parameters to be passed in here. And I expect it to be handled there. And it looks like I'm only getting the units and in the app ID. So did I accidentally change something in my code here? Log parameters. This is very strange. This should be working fine. Let me go to my tests. Sometimes when I get into this situation and I have a bunch of tests that are passing and just one that's failing, I like to comment out all of the other tests so that I can just see exactly what I want to look at without all the noise. Okay, so now my test is passing. Very interesting. Very concerning. Okay, what happens if I call this? Rerunning my test, and now I have a failure. And now it's saying that it's the first test that is failing. Oh, this is an issue. This is where we get into why writing tests can be a pain, because now I'm in a situation where I know my code works, but I'm having some weird issues writing my tests, well, I guess I can try this. I have one more idea. Instead of mocking it, I'm just going to let this fetch API run, and I'm going to say const, yeah, fetch.default, no, fetch.mock.calls at 0. Let's, yeah, console log the URL. So what I'm going to do, do I plan on doing the function call regularly? Yeah, it's a podcast that my buddy and I, Grant, we've been running for over a year now. So, I mean, regularly, somewhat regularly, we usually record it once every 2 weeks. So we'll do a live stream for the recording, and then we'll do publish it the following week, something like that. It's just a hobby. And yeah, this call or this stream is going to be every day, every weekday at least, for 100 days is what I want to do. The videos, it's all on my YouTube channel. So let me see. Let's see if I can pull that up for you. Boop, 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 boop. But if you wanted to go to like listen to the actual edited podcast, then you can hit up the fncall.com, and on here it has all of the episodes, but also you can find all the links to any of the places that it's distributed to. So if you want to listen to the actual like higher quality edited ones, go there. If you want to check out the live stream while we goof around and make some stuff that doesn't make it into the edit, let me get that for you. You can go to youtube.com. I don't have a nice short URL just yet until I get like a certain number of subscribers, but you can probably just search up Austin Gill and intersperse between my web dev office hours is going to be the function call live streams. So either way works. Yeah, I think the audio is probably the best way to do it. Then you can just like subscribe on a your favorite podcasting platform, and you'll get it whenever we publish. Well, thanks for hanging out anyway. I will catch you next time you're on, hopefully. And yeah, I'm gonna keep hacking away at this. Hopefully, I can just like figure it out so it's not such boring content, because some of this stuff is just like so boring to figure out, but also kind of important. So I'm gonna keep being boring for a minute. All right. So what I'm doing next is I want to log this URL. And where are my other console logs at? No, not there. I might be logging it here. Yep, let's get rid of that. Let's hit save, and let's rerun these to see. Okay, okay, now it's passing for some reason. Okay. Well, let's see what we've got. That's my URL, right? And I know this is an array, so I'm going to say dot at -1 to get the last item in the array. And then I'll get the first parameter. And I expect the URL to be this. That is a little hacky way to get the first parameter that fetch was called with at the most recent time, the most recent call that was made to fetch. Bit of a hack, but this should work consistently across all of our tests. I guess I don't need to replace that. That should be the same. And then I can uncomment that. And now I'm going to grab that one more time. And now my test should pass, except for that last one. Man, what is going on here? Well, whatever. So I don't, instead of the calls, I actually want this to be the returns. So let me get rid of that, hit save, and let me see what this is going to log out. It's like returns or results. Fetch calls is results. So results at -1, get me the most recent result. That should be an object with JSON, like a response object with JSON on it. Type is return, value is this object with JSON. Cool. That's what I want. I want the value from that. And then we'll say const results equals await value dot JSON. And then log the results. What a convoluted thing we are doing. Favorite animal, it is working. It is doing what I want it to do. So let's get favorite animal out of there. I'll say this is going to be response. This is going to be the fetch results. And this is going to be fetch results dot favorite animal. And this actually doesn't even need to be, I want my response to equal my fetch results. That's what I want my test to look like. Cool. Now, let's see if it actually works or not. It's not working. It's still this middle one that's not working, which is strange. So this middle test is not working because we are passing in the parameters. And then why is it not working? Log my URL, and all I'm getting is that. Okay. I think we're having a race condition. I think that might be what's going on. So yeah, because I'm running these tests concurrently, what could be happening is this API, this request goes out essentially at the same time and one comes back before the other, which means the last call that returns from fetch could be different. Maybe. Let's try not running that concurrently. And let's see how this works. That was the problem. Race condition. Cool. That probably means that my before each would have worked. Let's go back here and say before each fetch dot mock clear. That was what it was. Mock clear. Okay, and let's see if we can get this back to how it was. Instead of this, let's say, well, let's copy this, uncomment that out. We'll say expect fetch to be called with okay, that's passing. Let's take that exact same thing. Let's comment that out, log that. Oh boy, we got into race conditions today. That is never a fun one. But I'm glad we got to solve it. So that should be going. I guess the trick there is if you have things that are related to the same thing, don't run them concurrently, especially if it's asynchronous. Cool. So yes, this should be working fine now. It is passing. Let's make sure. Let's see this. Console log fetch dot mock dot calls. And let's see if this is an array. Let's get rid of that. We got rid of that. Is that the only place we're calling that? Yes, it is. And there we go. Okay, things are working as expected. Great. The only reason why I have bad code is because I write it myself. Cool. We get rid of that. Our tests are working as expected once again. Get rid of that. And then this test is actually written as I need it anyway, where we get the response from the API call, and then we also get the mocked implementation or the return value from fetch, the underlying fetch mock. We grab the value from that function execution response or return value. We know that that return value is this mocked value, which has the JSON thing to kind of imitate what real fetch does. And yeah, we get the results. So we basically expect that to be the same as that. Awesome. Pain in the ass, but awesome that we're done and we figured out that race conditions are a pain in my butt. On to the next test suite. Next test suite is going to look very much like the one we just wrote. Different method name. I think it looks like it's going to be slightly different. But because it's so similar, I'm actually going to copy all of these tests into that one. And what do we say? We want to say that it passes the text parameter. I guess we could say, if you don't provide a string, that you could add a function that doesn't do anything then. But I think what we'll do is just, it passes the text to the query string parameter. It passes parameter to the GeoAppify API. I'm going to take this. Every instance that we had this one call method, we're going to swap for get geolocation. And then we are going to copy that, paste that here. And now I need a random string that's going to be like the search string that we pass in here. So we're going to say const random, whatever. Do I already have a random string? I bet I do up here, right? No, I don't. Okay. Const random string is going to equal, sure, faker lorem word. Every one of these calls is going to be passed this fake string. And then the text, I expect it to have that fake string, and I expect this to be passed to HTTP or to my fetch. So we'll take that, every instance of that. We'll get that string now. That looks good to me, because we don't have default parameters, so we don't really need this second test. We're already covering it. That looks good. And JSON's just going to come back. We're just going to say whatever comes back from that JSON response, we're going to pass to the result of this function. Nothing really going on here. We're just checking that this gets passed in here. Everything else is essentially static logic. So it passes the parameter GeoAppify API. And that's it. Right? That's it. Cool. I should have, 45 tests now that are passing. And that's pretty much it for this suite of tests. Looks like, 4 test files, 45 passing tests. It takes 17 seconds to run, which is not great. That's pretty bad, actually. But it's really fast to restart, so who knows? Anyway, I'm on to my last test file. So we're going to get this set up to begin with, and then I'm not going to get too far into this today. But what I will look at is, let's see, where's my test? Copy that, delete that, copy this. delete that. And we're going to say main, going to say my import everything as, well, we're going to import the different parts. So this has a couple of named exports, or maybe just one named export. Export this function of this response provider. So I should be able to get the response provider as an import. That's one thing. Let's clear out these tests, all this fake stuff that I don't need. I don't need any of this. I probably don't need this before each, which means I won't need it there. And then we'll just get ourselves set up with a first test in our first test suite. Something like that. That looks good. Get that out, get my response provider. And now what I'm going to do that I want to get set up for next time is a little bit of a tip when writing functions like this is I have this function called format date and I have this function called get win direction. And those are used to generate some HTML. Generate a lot of HTML. Well, I'm generating a lot of HTML. And the thing is, if I want to test that these functions work correctly, currently I need to do that from within this function. Like I would essentially have to, in my test file, import the response provider from here. And then I'd have to pass in some sort of data to this response provider, some custom request thing. And somewhere in there, I'd have to make sure that I check that the geolocation information and or whatever, where is this format date being used? Somewhere I'd have to check that this format date stuff is being actually correctly rendered to the HTML. So instead of doing that, I'm actually going to make this easier on myself and just say, hey, let's export this function and let's export this other function. And just by adding these as exports, I can use them within this function. And I also have them available within to be able to import somewhere else. So you see how it's got that? I have format date and get win direction. So now I have all those available. So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to write my various test suites. One for format date, one for get win direction, and one for the response provider. So that is my function or my test suite that I'm going to be working on tomorrow. And these first two suites are going to be so freaking easy. I could actually probably do it right now. Oh man, I just noticed this INTL. This is probably not going to work with an edge workers either. That's annoying. I think that's a browser thing. I'll have to play with that and see. But yeah, that'll be cool. That we'll have these going on tomorrow, and the first two should be relatively easy because there's really not much to it. So looking forward to that. Hope that you enjoyed the show today. I know there was a lot of headbanging and a lot of trying to figure out what was going on, but we did learn together one of the most important things, which is that when we're working with asynchronous code and Vitest gives us the opportunity to run tests concurrently, we don't always want to do that. If you have different pieces, different tests that are dependent on the same object, and those tests run concurrently, and those tests are asynchronous, then you can get into a race condition that makes it extremely difficult to debug that. So, lesson learned. concurrency is cool until it's not cool. All right, that's it for me today. Hopefully you enjoyed the show, and I'll catch you next time. All right, see ya.